Alright, welcome back. This one's going to go in studio tips, I think. This is about thermocouples and how to diagnose them in advance so you don't spoil your firing and you can replace them before they really go bad. So, as in all these videos, don't do this unless you're qualified. Disconnect the power, take all safety precautions that you possibly can, and have somebody else do it if you don't know how. But it is quite easy to do. So, how do you diagnose it in advance? Well, you look in your kiln and you go, hey, there is a crack in the top thermocouple. Now, this thermocouple only has, I don't know, less than 150 firings on it. So, it is a problem. And we know that because of this little tiny crack. Once we see this crack, we know that we've got 1 to 10 firings left on it, and we'll show you why that is. But first, let's go to a quick movie on replacing your thermocouples. There's the crack we notice, very minor, very tiny. And once we notice that, we go, oops, that thing is done with. So, time to replace it. First step, disconnect the power, remove the screws, open this cabinet, and of course it doesn't open wide enough for the video. Next step is disconnect the thermocouple leads, paying attention to which color is which, yellow on top, red on the bottom. Following that, it's time to remove the thermocouple holder from the kiln. So take those screws out. If it's new, it might be a little difficult, but work it and you'll get it. And then slowly pull this thermocouple out of the bore. Now when a thermocouple goes bad, you saw that insulator expand, so don't, gently get it out of there. Don't damage your fire break. Remove the set screws from the thermocouple and take it off the holder. Now we have the thermocouple and we get to slide this stuff back and see what is this thing really like on the inside with that little tiny crack, and you see there's maybe 1 or 2 millimeters left, so it's done with. Time to get a new thermocouple. Don't forget to remove the tape. It's combustible. Reinsert it in the holder the same depth that it was originally inserted, and now you can snug these up. And if you make a movie like this, take your autofocus off because it'll drive you nuts. So red on top, silver on the bottom. That's the way we found it. It's embedded the same distance. It is a like-for-like replacement, meaning it's the same length thermocouple, so I can just simply reinstall it. And now gently put this back in a bore, and then we're going to tighten up the holder. And in my case, I think as I go through this, I put the top screw in. I don't seat it 100%, meaning I tighten it down and leave it just a little, ever so slightly loose, which then allows me to realign this holder to get my second screw in and get that really well aligned, and then I'll snug both of them up. Just something that I do from years of experience. And now that it's firmly held in place, it gives me an opportunity to tighten the set screws on my thermocouple a little firmer. So I want to say snug. Don't strip them, but they need to be tight. And then we're going to put the thermocouple leads back on, wire for wire. So red was on the bottom when we removed it, so we're going to put that back where it belongs, and it also corresponds to the red marking on our thermocouple in this case. And then I'm just going to insert the yellow wire, do the same. Again, we want to snug these. We don't want to mash them to death. This is a special wire, which is actually made of the same materials that the thermocouple is. And we just check for tightness, and then button this kiln up, put the screws back in, and apply power. So, okay, everything looks good. And final confirmation, just to show you that we've inserted this thermocouple and it projects the same amount as it originally did, or it matches the other ones. So that's always a good sign. And then a quick test on thermocouple 1, which is the one we replaced. And for a quick test, I'll just take a torch and I'll heat this one up to, oh, I don't know, I'm pretty happy at about 500 degrees. And so I think this gets really close. And now I've changed the thermocouple before it went bad and caused me all kinds of grief. So that was the purpose of this video, and then a little about thermocouples. When you see the small crack, you've got maybe 1 to 10 firings, and this is almost always true. As the corroded metal expands, and then it pushes so hard on the porcelain that it cracks it. So it's a nice preliminary indicator that, you know, a lot of times, almost all the time, you can catch in advance. Now, thermocouples wear out because mainly corrosion, mainly the sulfur in your pots. So you may have real high sulfur clay bodies that all of a sudden, you know, you go through thermocouples, or maybe it is the product. Either way, a couple little nuances about thermocouples. If you hook them up backwards, not a big deal. So if I switched our yellow and red wires, the old controllers would show you negative. So as you heated it up with the torch, you would be going further negative. So that's a definite indication. That's a oops. And then most new controllers give you a fault, so you just flip the wires around. And then a couple other weird things about thermocouples. If you can't figure out the red and the yellow side, and that's common in America. So everywhere else red is red, but you go to other countries and they mark yellow, blue, whatever. And in the United States, you usually see yellow. In this case, this one was marked red on one side and left silver on the other. If you ever have to diagnose and figure that out, take a magnet. The one that it sticks to will be the yellow lead. The magnet will not stick to the other wire. So that's just a couple tips, and hopefully it's beneficial and you could do advanced diagnostics on it. And even if you don't change your own, now you can call your kiln tech and say, get out here within the next day or so. I need thermocouples. I know that. And it's just a nice proactive way for a studio to keep maintaining their firing schedule and not have a bunch of downtime. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you helped, and I hope to see you in the next video.